I couldn't hardly turn my neck. I couldn't feel my arms any longer. I felt myself wasting away. I wouldn't be able to fight any longer, but I didn't think I had any fight left in me.
A Raised Red Living Blue production. For educational purposes, this series relies on publicly available news, court records, and interviews. This podcast does not intend to defame, harm, or misrepresent any person, organization, or entity. Views expressed are not legal advice, and all individuals are presumed innocent unless proven guilty. As these are ongoing legal matters, facts may evolve. Listener discretion is advised due to discussions of violence and trauma.
Shelby County grand jury has indicted a man on multiple charges after deputies found
DA
explosives.
Ben Fuller says that Jerry Clarke is in police custody on a
Jerry decided to
$400,000
exercise his
bond.
First Amendment rights on his own property by putting up anti-Trump signs.
Alabama Injustice Season 1. The Silencing of Jerry Lee Clarke.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Alabama Injustice Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Will. We've got like the most special guest of all time. We've got the whole reason, the whole catalyst for this podcast even getting created. Mr. Jerry Lee Clarke is joining us in studio, and I'm just like shocked. It's almost like this is not Jerry Lee. This is some kind of imposter. I mean, the way you carry yourself. I mean, the way you couldn't even walk the first time I saw you in person. I mean, it was like, of course you were chained.
Yeah.
You're bound by chains, but it was like, you were so frail, so weak. And now look how strong you are. It's amazing.
To a point, hard to put my arms above my head any longer. Can't get my hands to close. I couldn't hold a paintbrush to save my life now, and couldn't paint above my head, so I think my painting career is over, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, I think from where you were to where you are now, it's like night and day. Joined by your daughter, Katherine, who is like still fighting to clear your name and, right this ship, right all these wrongs. There's no quitting her. And then Alan Thomas is joining us. Alan was a big part of, the effort to get you out, and, has got a bunch of like all these amazing details in his head from the case and everything. So happy everybody's here. I know everybody has been waiting patiently for this episode, but this is what we've been waiting for. And my expectations were really low, and I am just like so amazed right now to see you in the condition you're in. It's amazing.
It just took some food and love.
Yeah. Yes, a lot of Mexican food.
A lot of Mexican food.
All right, so let's get into it. I'm gonna keep it kind of simple. We're gonna do 5 questions, but I think each question could be easily, a podcast in and of itself. But the first one, I want to focus on the First Amendment aspect of this. So you were exercising, I don't think it can be disputed, your fundamental First Amendment right on your own property. You put up the Trump sign, an anti-Trump sign in a ruby red state, but it was absolutely your right to do so. We see all these other signs about against, like throwing Biden in jail or whatever they are. They're outrageous. So one side can say whatever they want, and the other side gets silent. But my question is, at what specific moment did you realize that the local authorities didn't exist to have your back and protect your First Amendment right and your right to free speech, but instead were there like in defiance of you and your First Amendment right and trying to silence you and basically treat you as a criminal?
Well, when we first moved into the house, there was a sign out on the road. It measured probably 4 or 5 foot high and 4 foot wide, and it advertised my house for sale. Well, after the sale was over, about a month later, I thought, well, it's probably time to take the sign down. So I called up the real estate company and said, whose sign is it? And it was like, well, you can have it. I said, nobody needs it. You guys don't need it for anything else. It was like, no, sir. It's your sign. You can do with it what you want. And I thought, well, I don't want to let a good sign go to waste. And Trump had just recently gotten reelected, and I was a little angry over that fact, so I decided I'd go ahead and put up a sign. I went to a sign company and have them make a Never My President, Trump sign. Went ahead and stuck it out there and put lights on it. Well, it was about a month or so after I had had the sign up when a gentleman stopped by in his pickup truck and claimed that the sign was his. And I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, I put up the sign for the real estate company. Well, it turned out later on that he was actually one of the builders that had worked on the house, and he was trying to advertise the garage that we have for it to be remodeled into a home. Well, he hadn't claimed the sign. It was only 2x4s and some cheap plastic, so I couldn't imagine anybody taking it down and reusing it, but he claimed that he needed to take the sign down because the materials were his. And I told him that I would not let him take the sign down. If he ever brought an order for me to take the sign down from an authority, then I would. He kind of argued with me and got a little threatening, and I didn't know what, and he was going to call the police. Well, after about an hour, he showed back up with a policeman. It was a Helena police officer, and the police officer wanted to talk to me. I was sitting on the front porch. He stayed down on the driveway, claimed that Mr. I think his name was had the right to take my sign down because he had put it up. And I said, well, I called the real estate company and they said the sign was mine. And now that I went ahead and spent about $500 on turning it into an anti-Trump sign, I wasn't going to let anybody take it. So I told the police officer that if he wanted the sign down, that he'd have to bring me an order from a judge for me to go ahead and take that sign down. So that was really the very first inkling I got that the police might be involved. It didn't really scare me at the time, but it gave me pause to think that it might be a bigger problem than I had anticipated.
What did you think was going to happen? Like, how far did you think that someone was going to be willing to take this? Did you think it was going to be just the police coming to talk to you? Did you think that maybe it would turn into a court type of issue?
I had no idea that it would be a legal type issue. I assumed since it was my property and my sign, and I had spent the money on it, that it was mine. What I thought in the back of my mind is neighbors possibly trying to do something to the sign. Spray paint it or do something like that was where my mind went. And that I would lose some of the neighbors, but I hadn't even met any of them really. But I did notice the people who sold us the house across the street weren't as friendly to me anymore after that. I didn't realize at the time that most of the neighbors didn't appreciate the sign, but that's what I thought at the worst, that I'd have trespassers doing something to the sign.
So the neighbor across the street originally owned the house?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Interesting.
In fact, I had to call the police out against this gentleman due to the harassment. My dad had been arrested, and it might have been maybe a week and a half to 2 weeks afterwards, and I was there doing maintenance in the yard, and the gentleman stopped and we exchanged words, and he called me some really harsh names in front of my husband. And I actually had to call Helena PD in Shelby County out to make a report. Took a picture of his tag number. I had no clue that he lived diagonal across from us. So I took a picture of his tag number and then saw him pull into the driveway right afterwards. And I asked the police, and they said, well, what do you want from us? And I said, please go over there and tell him that this is my parents' property, that I'm in care of it, that I do not wish for him to stop at this property any longer, and not to exchange any words with me at all. I'm here doing what I think I need to do. I'm taking care of the home, cleaning up the yard due to all the debris being thrown in the yard from all the harassment and hate that we're, receiving. I actually had to call them back out for the same gentleman while I was painting the sign white. He stopped and gave me some more choice words. He still lives across the street. This sign is exactly what started it all. I painted it white for our protection. This was an anti-Trump sign that my dad, Jerry Lee Clarke, put up in his yard earlier this year. This is what has started all this controversy. This is what began my father's journey of being jailed in the Shelby County, Alabama jail.
In your instance, you called out both Helena PD and Shelby County.
Yes, because Helena had told us that they couldn't respond to us, that they were not in our we were not in their jurisdiction, and that we had to call Shelby County.
Well, it's really interesting that they tell you to call Shelby County, and yet this gentleman over here is willing to come up and speak to you in person and try to get you to take it down. It seems like when it comes to silencing speech or picking which team we're on or cheering for your most favored politician, that badges grant extra rights, and if it's on their side and they believe in it, they'll stop and they will cross any line to pretend to enforce a particular law just so that the right message is heard and what they consider the wrong message is silenced.
Again, it's changing lines for what benefits them at the moment.
That's exactly right.
Alabama's experiencing a lot of that right now.
Moving goalposts, changing rules, certainly.
Well, being in real estate, I can tell you, like, as soon as you close on a property, if I want to keep a sign up, I ask permission from the seller. Like, hey, can I keep a sign up for like a week just with my sold rider on it? Because I know if I leave it there, I mean, they could just throw it away. You know, I mean, it's not my property any longer. And I just wanted to clarify, just in case people missed it, that this was like two plus months after you close on the property. I mean, you're not too busy to go by and pick up your sign a good 2+ months after you close.
No, they had plenty of time.
The motivation was something different.
Plus, it was fairly cheaply built. I ended up taking the sign down and putting one up much more substantial with 4x4s and real plywood. This was a real estate sign. The materials they made it out of, you couldn't have taken it down and reused the materials for anything. So I knew it was a false reason that they wanted their sign so they could use it somewhere else. They wouldn't have been able to use it somewhere else. It was printed with a picture of my house on it. So they couldn't have painted it over. They would have just torn it down. So I knew all they wanted to do was destroy the sign.
Got a kind of a bunny trail question for you a little bit, but before we move on, I'm curious of, like, you mentioned after the election you weren't happy with the result. But I think, as crazy as it sounds to us in this room, like, we can't relate to the mindset of the other side, and they seem to not be able to relate to us. Like, they just, label it Trump derangement syndrome. But is there one thing, a couple things, or something specific that about Trump that really compelled you to put this sign up? Because you knew there was going to be some blowback.
I guess the biggest deal is the era that I grew up in, which, my dad fought in the Battle of the Bulge over in Germany. He's part of the greatest generation. I grew up with John Wayne and Clint Eastwood saying what they mean and meaning what they say. And I had been in sales for many years when I was younger, and I could tell when I was being sold and lied to. And I could tell right off the bat with Donald Trump. I disliked him years before he ever came down the Golden Escalade. But for America to let him in the second time, I couldn't believe that. I figured that everybody could make a mistake the first time, and they didn't realize what they had done. Almost like where Jesus had said when he was on the cross, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do.
Right.
But on the second go around, they knew what they were doing, and they knew what he would do. I don't know if they didn't believe him, but, the old story of the emperor's new clothes and the Pied Piper. There was even an old story that Isaac Asimov wrote on the Foundation trilogy, to where the mule, who was a super being that they hadn't seen coming, that would have power over the brains of the entire galaxy, I couldn't believe that anybody would believe that Donald Trump would be good for the country the second go around. And it just galled me so badly. I couldn't stand the thought. I had to do something. Free speech was the only thing I could think to do, was to go ahead and state my thoughts out loud so that other people like me wouldn't be afraid to speak out themselves, which is part of the reason that I think that a lot of people stay silent. I think there's more democratic, right-leaning people in the world, but they're afraid to speak out. I guess I learned that I should have been afraid to speak out, but there's too much John Wayne in me.
Absolutely. It's interesting. I saw a post the other day that had up the map of the U.S. And it was showing the states which still carry a 50 to 50 plus approval rating for Trump. And Alabama, obviously, is one of those states. But like Mississippi's not.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, Mississippi used to be like our redheaded stepchild. Like we're pretty near the bottom, but Mississippi was always worse. Does it blow your mind that you are watching TV and seeing all these political ads, and from the Republican side, they're still like, I'm either got Trump's endorsement or I'm a Trump Republican.
Yep.
Does that blow your mind?
It does. It makes me sick when I watch television, and especially now that all the ads are coming up where they'll tie themselves so closely to Donald Trump. When and if he goes down, they're definitely going down with him. But for some reason, they're betting that, I hate to say this, but I have a funny feeling Trump's going to find a way to change the rules and run again.
Yeah, I mean, you said he showed us who he was in Trump 1.0.
Yeah.
Trump 2.0 is it's like so much worse.
Extravagantly different. Just last night, I was going through and filling out my campaign finance reports and had seen a contribution that I wasn't aware of, had no idea who the person was. I called them up, said, hey, just want to thank you for your contribution. And he goes into a long explanation about how inspiring it was to see me running for this particular office, because there are so many Democrats or liberal-leaning people or independent thinkers in the state of Alabama that are so drowning in this sea of red that to see a fresh voice come up and actually stand up and actually speak up and refuse to be silenced was, lack of a better word, inspiring, endearing, and it mattered. And so you're absolutely right in that in absence of anything else functionally in the moment on your property that you can do, speaking your mind is certainly something that is protected by the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. And as far as changing rules, well, we are in a whirlwind of rule changing right now. Goalposts moving, and we don't know how it's going to shake out. And they're going to change the rules on Wednesday in Louisiana, and they're going to change the rules this week in Alabama. And after those rules get changed a little bit, well, they're going to come back again, just like has been done for years, and change them a little bit more, and then they're going to change them a little bit more. And every time they change those rules, it gets harder and harder for people like you and me to speak our minds, have our voices heard, and actually make a difference in the politics that govern our country and rule over all of us, not just the red team, not just the blue team, but all of us, because we all live here.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I heard it described as a race to the bottom, this whole gerrymandering battle.
Shelby County grand jury has indicted a man on multiple charges after deputies found
DA Ben Fuller
explosives.
says that Jerry Clarke is in police custody on a
Gary decided to
$400,000
exercise his
bond.
First Amendment rights on his own property by putting up anti-Trump signs.
Alabama Injustice Season 1. The Silencing of Jerry Lee Clarke.
But for this question, I just want to focus on the realities of the medical neglect that we all feel that you suffered while in the custody of Shelby County Sheriff's Department. It is believed that you suffered a stroke. You dealt with severe muscular atrophy. I mean, Alan in court, the day you pled out, was like, what were you saying? Like, what do you want to eat? Mm-hmm. Like, what do you want to eat? I mean, he was loudly speaking to you. You just looked straight ahead, and he kept like trying to get your attention, and then you looked and turned to him, and then turned back and started looking like off into space again.
It was a vacant stare.
Yeah, like you were La La Land. Couldn't hear, so it was crazy. But can you walk us through the moments you realized you were having like multiple medical emergencies while in custody. And like, what response did you receive from the jail staff when you asked them for help?
Well, I guess the first time as I was sitting on the toilet and leaned forward and actually fell off the toilet onto the guy's bunk that was straight across from me and hurt my shoulder quite. And when I stood up, I was so dizzy I fell back down again. Cut my forehead a little bit, and I realized then that just standing up was making me dizzy. There would be times when I'd try to get into the shower, and I was so dizzy in the shower, I fell in there once and busted my face wide open and my lip open, hit my forehead. Generally could not move my arms any longer. I was confined. At first it was just on the floor because there was no cot for me to start with. And I was on the floor in the holding cells to start with. It was difficult to turn to my left. I've got a bad shoulder on my left-hand side, and I couldn't turn that way. I couldn't turn to the right. It would hurt my shoulders too bad on the concrete. So all I could do was lay on my back. I noticed just trying to stand up every time it was pill call, because it was twice a day that you'd have to stand up and have the nurses hand you pills through the door tray area on the door. I was getting weaker and weaker and weaker, starting to have double vision. That was probably the first time I noticed that I was getting weaker. Just the dizziness and not being able to move my arms very good. And when I stood up, it was difficult for my legs to support me.
And you were communicating that with the prison staff?
Yeah, I had told the nurses about it, and they just said, well, just, try to stand up and don't move for a minute and try to get your balance. But nobody was really doing anything about it.
So how old are you?
I'm 66 now. I actually went into jail on my 66th birthday, which would be June 26th. So that was the day that I came out of the Shelby hospital, where they had kept me for 3 days for a psychiatric evaluation after they first arrested me. Had me in there, and then the day I came out was my birthday. They arrested me in front of Shelby Hospital and took me to Shelby County Jail. So, happy birthday.
Well, I think it's important to talk about your age for the perspective of our viewers and our listeners. Like, just imagine if you were in your 60s, and in response to you having a Let's Go Brandon or an F Joe Biden or a Lock Her Up Hillary sign in your yard, you were incarcerated. And then for how long, Katherine, did he sleep on the concrete floor?
For half his stay, he was on the floor without a cot, so on the concrete.
And you're concerned, correct me if I'm wrong here, on this twice a day pill regimen. Like, what were the pills?
I still have no clue. They will not release the medical records to me. They said that we would have to get a subpoena through the lawyer to get his medical records while he was in jail. I had no clue what medications he was taking, if he had seen anybody, if he was getting the medical care that he needed. I'm his power of attorney, and I had taken those papers to the jail. I had spoken to the staff. I had spoken to what they said was the head of their medical unit. And I made sure that they had multiple copies of this. They would not give me any information at all I still have no clue what he was taking while he was there. When we went to his first doctor's appointment, they said, well, what medications has he been on? Your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah, so you think that it's a combination of, him not even being able to sleep on the floor with a cot.
I can't sit in the floor for 2 hours and play with my kids without my back hurting. I can only imagine what it would be like to have to lay on a concrete floor around the clock. I can't imagine it. I just turned 40 years old and I have a bunch of kids, and being down in the floor for a while, playing cars and trucks or doing crafts, and my back's aching for the rest of the day and I have to have Tylenol. I couldn't imagine spending around the clock. That seems a lot like being in a dog kennel at the Humane Society. It makes your dog's hips and feet go back.
Right.
It was inhumane treatment.
Did you question what these pills were? Did you recognize some of them? Did you think about
none of them had the same shape as the ones I was taking for the doctors before I went in. I just knew that there was 5 or 6 in the morning or around 7 a.m. and there was 5 or 6 in the evening around 9 p.m. All I heard was they would yell out, "Pill call." I'd stand up and step over the 1 or 2 guys between me and the door. The cell was made for 2, but sometimes they'd park 4 of us in there and for me to step over. I fell several times stepping over people, trying to get to the door to hold my hand out and get my pills. Sometimes I'd have to walk to the sink, which made me walk over 3 or 4 of them on the way to the sink and 3 or 4 of them on the way back to the door. But I got pretty good at saving my dinner time water, or enough of it that I could take my pill right away. But, it was mandatory to take your pills.
I do know that some of them were vitamins. They told me that because I kept on saying, something is really wrong, you guys. Like, he is whittling down to nothing. Mm-hmm. Something is very bad. And I told them I'm afraid that my dad is going to die in you guys' care. And they did tell me at one point that they were giving him some vitamins and had put him on some Ensure drinks. And that's what they were doing to combat his health crisis.
My big question on that is, they were giving you 5 or 6 in the morning and 5 or 6 in the evening. How many were you taking? I don't need to know what you were taking, just quantity. How many were you taking before you were arrested?
Good question.
What, 4 or 5 maybe? And that included a 1-a-day vitamin?
Yeah.
So they were giving you more drugs inside than you were taking outside. And
he was loopy. I would tell you there's a lot of times that his speech was completely slurred, that he wasn't making a lot of sense. We didn't get a ton of visits, because we didn't get phone calls since he was in the medical ward. They didn't allow them to speak on the phone, so we never talked on the phone while he was incarcerated. But during some of the video visits, that was not my dad. Yeah. He was so spaced out. I have no clue what it was, but something was very wrong.
They can see him losing weight. The nurses can,
It looks like a completely different... He looked like a shell of a man when we got him out that night, and I took him straight up to the hospital, because he had fallen in court and busted his head open. I took him straight to the ER, and I took a picture of him in the wheelchair, and he tells me all the time, I can't believe the way that I look now. I just don't look like myself. And I showed him a picture of the night that we all went to court and we got him home. He looks night and day difference. If this is all that food and love and a little bit of rest and an actual bed does,
an absence of over-medication and probably some medications that are contraindicated that you shouldn't be giving at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And let's repeat what you were told you needed to produce in order to get a list of these medications or vitamins.
They said if we wanted it so badly that I would have to get the lawyer to subpoena for his medical records for the time that he was incarcerated. Now, even his own PCP tried to get his medical records and even went as far as going to the jail, I was told, to try to visit with my father to make sure that he was okay, because he was concerned of his care while he was there. So I was told by the PCP that he went down to the Shelby County jail and demanded to see his patient, that he wanted to do a welfare check and make sure that he was okay. And they told him absolutely not. And he even tried to get the medical records and was denied.
Yeah, I wanted to point that out just in case anybody's watching or listening that, really understands the law and maybe would have a comment for us or something to
These
provide.
families have no clue what their loved ones are being treated for, what medications they're on, medical emergencies while in jail. We're being kept in the dark so they don't have to do any extra work, paperwork. We're not being told what's going on with our loved ones. I never received a call that said, hey, your dad's in a really bad way, or hey, we took him for this test, or we've changed his medication, or any of these things whatsoever at all.
How was your morale? Did you have hope of getting out? I know at one point, I don't know if you remember this, but you may have told Katherine, hey, just leave me here. Just forget about me and y'all move on with your lives.
Well, I figured I must have, nobody had told me what I was really getting charged with. I didn't know what it was. I just assumed that they had found the fireworks, that they had come up with charges, I would say trumped up charges. I didn't want Katherine spending all of her time and money on trying to get me out. The only thing that was important to me is that she was able to save herself, my wife, and the house. And that one of these days I would probably get out. I assumed it'd be a couple of years before I ever made it out. And I'd find a way to stay alive, I thought. But at my age, it was not as important as her taking care of my wife and keeping the house. And I didn't want her to spend everything on a hopeless cause to get me out. I'm really glad that you did, though. Really, really glad that you got me out. I kind of lost hope. Some of the worst dreams I've ever had in my life is I was laying there. I don't know if it had anything to do with some of the medicine that I was on. I know that it didn't take very long after I would eat my dinner and take my nighttime pills before I'd fall asleep. You have some terrible thoughts when you're in jail. And all I could do was blame myself. I put my wife, my kids, and everybody through so much hell by exercising my First Amendment rights.
Well,
I assumed it was my fault.
Well, let's back up just a little bit, because I think, you brought up something that's a really good point from like the initial days following the Never My President sign going up. Somebody told you they were going to burn the sign or light your house on fire?
They had posted the address and the sign, and that it would be a shame for my new house to burn down. I don't think they realized my first house before that had just burned down, and I had gotten some fairly severe burns. I think it was
see them on your arm.
second, and where the skin will never grow back again. But yeah, it was one of the worst pains I had ever felt. It took months and months for them to heal, and the hair will never grow back again. Yeah, I was extra afraid, especially when they posted that somebody would attempt to burn down my house again after me initially suffering my old house burning down. So, yeah, that put an extra beat in my heart.
Yeah, I mean, like the trauma.
I'd like to point out that I'm not going to call him a gentleman because he's not. The man who doxed my parents, he posted pictures and the full address and such on his social media. And he's also the gentleman who listed the MLS number and the realtor's information online for someone to get the realtor to make someone take the sign down. So not only did he harass and trespass and dox my parents, in a way he kind of doxed that realtor also. He was coming up with any idea possible to get that sign taken down one way or the other. And it's the same gentleman who has continuously harassed me on our property after the sign was painted white that he wants it taken down. I've got photos and videos of him screaming at me, telling me that I better take down the sign if I know what's good for me. And I went to Shelby County, and I've talked to the DA and the magistrate multiple times asking for a stalking charge to be put against him, that I want a warrant for his arrest for stalking, trespassing, and doxing, and I cannot get any kind of an answer, and I cannot get any type of a solution. I feel unsafe on the property because he continuously drives by and screams and creeps by, the house at a slow speed, and that nothing has came from that.
My biggest thought is really for the greater good of our whole nation. When one of our neighbors can post up some information like that online that is legitimately a direct threat. Like, seashells with some numbers is one thing, but saying it's going to be a shame if your house burned down at this address on the 5,000 block of this road, and I want all of my followers and friends to take note of this, and the person that lives at this address is the enemy, and we have to do something about it. Mm-hmm. It's a direct threat. And to allow that to continue while so many other much more minor issues are at stake or prosecuted, it blows my mind that there's not equal justice under the law, that there's two different Americas. And if we're going to keep our republic, how do we keep our republic if we and our neighbors are at each other's throats like that, and the justice system that's supposed to mediate between those potential conflicts isn't there as an independent arbiter or a peacekeeping force? It's there to help enforce the views of one particular side over the other.
Absolutely.
And long term, that terrifies me. That's absolutely frightening. Without that equal justice under the law, without the protection of your free speech, then this gentleman's free speech, like his free speech is fine, even though it's a direct threat. Your free speech is intolerable and will be punished personally within the neighborhood and by the courts themselves. And, you know, that's cruel and unusual punishment. And I guess my only other suggestion would be, if you wanted to change the sign at this point and really rub it in their faces, just write in or make a sign that says, "Go to church or the devil will get you," and see if that sign will pass.
Shelby County grand jury has indicted a man on multiple charges after deputies found
DA Ben Fuller
explosives.
says that Jerry Clarke is in police custody on a
Jerry decided to
$400,000
exercise his
bond.
First Amendment rights on his own property by putting up anti-Trump signs.
Alabama Injustice Season 1. The Silencing of Jerry Lee Clarke.
We're on pressure to plead. You eventually accepted a plea deal that secured your release, but there's way more people than those in this room that feel like that deal was manufactured to crush any recourse, any appeal. Like, you can't file suit. I mean, you just had to basically accept all the terms, one of which we've outlined. You lost your Second Amendment right. Do you feel like the system gave you a choice between your legal rights and your actual physical survival?
I did have a choice. I remember my daughter talking to me that, you know, if I could stay in there for another couple months, that it's possible with the AFL-CIO, that some of the other things that might be able to take over my case and argue my case. I think the worst problem at the time was I began to realize that I wasn't going to last much longer in there. I couldn't hardly turn my neck. I couldn't feel my arms any longer. I couldn't close my hands or make a fist any longer. I couldn't raise my arms above my head or even up as high as my shoulders any longer. I felt myself wasting away. I had gotten down to right around the 150 in my weight from over 200, feeling dizzy all the time and lightheaded. I just didn't think I had a choice. So when they offered me a way out, the only thing I could think about was that was my last chance to get out. So I went ahead and accepted the plea bargain that they gave me, knowing that I wouldn't be able to fight any longer, but I didn't think I had any fight left in me. So that was mainly the reason that I went ahead and took it. I did have a choice. I could have stayed in and tried if I was a younger man, if I had a little more muscle mass, if I had any longer left in me. But, you know, knowing that my wife is in her 70s now and I was well into my 60s, I felt that this was my only chance to get out. So I accepted what I was given.
I think it was, we could see it with our own eyes the day you took the plea. I mean, you were in such condition. I thought your daughter, was going to go to jail because she was so pissed when you fell that you had no business not being in a wheelchair.
And in a wheelchair, help when he fell. Like you guys heard me in there.
Yeah, it was. I was like, oh Jesus, this is going to go completely sideways fast. I mean, you could not even stand on your own 2 feet, and you're being observed by nurses this entire time. Nobody's waving a red flag going, hey, this is not looking good.
And it's not like I wasn't calling. It's not like, oh, out of sight, out of mind. I haven't seen Mr. Clarke, in a bad way. When I'm calling you daily and I'm saying, hey, this is Katherine Shelton, not trying to take up your time. I'm just calling to check on my daddy. I just want to make sure he's okay. Well, ma'am, we can't share anything with you. That's fine, but I will share with you that my dad is not in a good way. If you would please check on him, make sure he's all right. I was a squeaky wheel. Like, I bet they hate calling me Colin. I bet they hate to hear my name. They were seeing him being so little and so frail. And he looked sick. He smelled sick. He did not look well at all. I mean, you guys saw him that day. Not only the cause for him falling, but like afterwards, no medical help. They didn't call anyone. Like, the EMT wasn't called. Nobody really checked him.
Well, the judge gave me an option if I wanted to go ahead and delay my plea deal for a couple of days so my head would feel better. But at that time, I didn't care what my head felt like. I was going to find one way or another to get out of jail that day. So, Katie barred the door. I went ahead and stood there, whether my forehead was bleeding or not, or my knee hurt or whatever. All that mattered was that if I could get out to you. It ended up happening. I was worried that it wasn't going to happen. It seemed almost like an impossible dream, but it felt like I was closer. And when they finally said, well, Mr. Clarke, go out that door, go down to the next door and turn left. And when they handed me my bag of clothes that I was wearing when I got out and put them on and told me to walk out that door, and I realized that I was no longer in jail, that I was heading out to the front of the jail. And then you weren't there. And I got scared to death again. So I asked about a phone call. They pointed me at a phone. I was able to dial your number. And when you said you were less than 5 minutes away, my heart skipped a beat. I got a tear in my eye. And then when you pulled up, well. So yeah, I took the plea deal. Probably shouldn't have. Should have been stronger. I didn't have any strength left.
When did you suspect that he had a stroke?
So he was arrested on June 26th, and I didn't get video visitation with him for several weeks. But once I finally did see him, his face was slurred, so I'd say it was like mid-July. And I started making noise and telling them something is wrong. I think he's had a stroke. Half his face is drooping. His speech is slurred. Half of his face doesn't move when he, talks. One eye is drooping worse than the other. He wasn't in his right mind. He wasn't forming full sentences. He just wasn't quite all there. And even when the lawyer went to go see him, because 2 lawyers went to go see him that day for power of attorney, his defense lawyer, and they both noted that he did not seem himself, and they did believe that a medical occurrence had happened, and that his words were slurred. I knew then, once it wasn't just me saying it, 2 other adults who were professionals were saying, something's wrong here, your dad's not in a good way.
So over the course of this ordeal, there are at least 4 very specific amendments in the Bill of Rights, your rights, that the state of Alabama, Shelby County, City of Helena could be argued violated your rights. That's a problem. What Shelby County Jail did, though, the nurses, the people there, etc., really shows a cultural perspective in this state that I think most of the people in the state would consider themselves to be Christian, and it violates that Christianity, and that boils down to the absolute value of life, the fundamental value of life. And for the state of Alabama, or for the various counties, to incarcerate someone for possession of marijuana, driving under the influence, reckless driving, rape, murder, domestic violence, domestic assault, pick a crime. We got a lot of them in this state. But regardless of whether it was actual specific violence against another human being, or whether it was simply a victimless crime that happens to be on the books and someone is in the process of their trial and conviction, etc. A, we don't see innocent until proven guilty in this state. B, those incarcerated are not given the decency to be treated as human beings, regardless whether or not they've even been convicted yet, or regardless enough of their crime, alleged crime. And to simply treat the humans that are in the care and custody of our state or in our county with such contempt, disregard, and disrespect, I think it's a very sad way for our state to be. And without being able to honor life, even in the instances that you were in, we're going to pack 4 per cell. You know, we don't care. You're going to have a medical emergency. We don't care. Then I think we really need to take some long, hard oversight, investigative looks into how all of these prisons are run, how the medical is being conducted, because it's not about rehabilitation, right? It's not about incarceration to take away your liberty for a certain period of years. It's about outright punishment, and not just the punishment from removing you from society. It is the active and enforced, inflicted punishment that the state gives and imparts onto those incarcerated. And it all boils down to, what is the value of a human life? And whether you're just arrested in the process of trial, going to plea deal, or you have been convicted of any crime, it doesn't matter where you are in that criminal judicial process. The moment any individual goes behind those doors and behind those bars, they are no longer a human, and therefore, whether it's Shelby County or St. Clair Correctional, it doesn't matter. The state can and will treat anybody inside those walls however it deems fit. And that is something that goes so far against our fundamental principles as a people, as a society, and as a culture. And I think we really need to take this moment. I think we need your story to get out there to show and highlight and showcase exactly how abhorrent it is, how far we've come, how low we've gotten, because again, it's another race to the bottom. And the bar is so low, it is literally in hell.
There's not enough oversight over Alabama prisons and especially county jails. Like, the sheriff is the oversight of the county jail. But when the sheriff is the one doing it, who's looking at him? Alabama prisons are ridiculously...
And there's a long history across counties of sheriffs undercutting the food budget. You know, they get $1 million a year for the food budget, but they're only going to send $750,000 to Cisco or whatever purveyor they use, and that other $250,000 goes straight into their pockets. Every now and then a sheriff gets arrested for it. Every now and then that story makes news. You know, but when money is skimmed off of the top by the people that are supposed to be there to enforce the laws, and meanwhile they're there actively breaking laws in order to enrich themselves at the expense of 60 of your previous pounds. I mean, talk about a pound of flesh. Should we extract 60 from San Diego?
Shelby County grand jury has indicted a man on multiple charges after deputies found
DA Ben Fuller
explosives.
says that Jerry Clarke is in police custody on a
Gary decided to
$400,000
exercise his
bond.
First Amendment rights on his own property by putting up anti-Trump signs.
Alabama Injustice Season 1. The Silencing of Jerry Lee Clarke.
It's hard not to come to the conclusion that this was all kind of part of a plan. Like, it wasn't a coordinated effort. There's so many examples. There are content creators that felt, I mean, I had one in particular tell me, you know, just point blank, that he didn't want to touch your case with a 10-foot pole because of the charges. And that, you know, there was very little news coverage. We only had, one reporter write a story about you. We just thought that was so odd, you know, and I think that was all part of it. It was all like they turned friends, family members away from you because everybody's like, well, gosh, maybe we didn't really know this guy. He's a danger to society.
Submit or die.
So when the plea deal came, I mean, the reality is you really didn't have a choice.
I mean, stay here, and maybe your daughter can fight hard enough. Maybe the right lawyer will come around, but it's stay here or get out and be quiet and be glad that you got out.
Yeah, maybe stay here and maybe survive, or get out.
Well, I didn't sign anything, and I won't be quiet. By the time that I'm done, which is going to be, the last day of my life that I'm breathing and kicking, Shelby County needs to know exactly what they did. The state of Alabama needs to know what they did. Helena PD needs to know what they did. They had absolutely no jurisdiction. If you can't come to me when I call 911, you sure as shit should not be outside of my house shining lights in the house, harassing me, driving by, or responding for the neighbors who were calling against the sign. I hope everyone hates to hear me coming. I hope they hate to hear my name. He may not ever recover 100%. This may never better him in any other way. But I hope that they know that you cannot and will not continue to go against people for thinking differently than you, talking out against you, because I'll survive way longer. You guys, I bet, would want to make the phone call. You guys are going to go about it your way and talk to whoever you have to. If Shelby County or the state of Alabama wants to come pick on somebody, pick on me. I'm more your size. Because they did wrong, and I'm going to make sure they know that they did wrong. Whether it's my dad or the lady who wore the penis costume at the No Kings rally that was arrested for that. Whoever it may be who's talking out against not only law enforcement, but the current administration. They want them to be silenced, and they don't think that anyone's going to fight back. I'm your girl, because I'm mad about it. For what they did to my dad, they took away his livelihood. He'll never work again. He'll never be able to support himself or my mother again. And they went about it the wrong way. They didn't cross their T's and dot their I's, and they should have, because I'm going to find it.
I'm curious, I know Katherine's got a lot to say on this, but what does accountability look like to you? Do you feel like Shelby County owes you anything, or are you resigned to stay silent? What does the future hold for Jerry Lee Clarke?
Well, I'd love to get my life back, but I think that's impossible. Laying in the bed that I did, it was only 3 foot wide. I had my shoulders tucked in close to me. I had my arms crossed across my chest for 23 and a half hours a day for 6.5 months. It has caused nerve damage. I can't raise my arms. The nerves in them, I've got dead spots all in my wrists. I can't close my hands any longer, or I couldn't make a fist and hit anybody for fear I'd break my hands. When my 4-year-old grandson wrestles with Grandpa, he wins. Now, I can't roughhouse away around with him because he's actually stronger than Grandpa is any longer. And boy, I used to be Superman. I would pick up 40-foot ladders and sling them up against the house and climb up on the roofs. And this was just a month before I was incarcerated. I mean, I was still out painting 3-story high houses and had a great reputation. I painted for some real big names in Alabama over my 50 years of painting, and that's all come to a close now. It's hard for me to make up a bed. It's hard for me to tie my own shoes. It's hard for me to pull my pants on. I'm exhausted by the time I get out of a shower. I won't get any of that back. My life has changed completely. My daughter had to move in, along with all my grandkids now and my wife. It's all I can do to get up and piddle around the house a little bit, wash some dishes. I'm not coming back from that. They took away my right to vote. So I don't have a legal voice any longer that I can cast a vote with. They took away my livelihood. They took away my Second Amendment rights. But they haven't silenced me. It took months for me to get my balls back. But I've got them now. I've actually gone to a sign company, and there's going to be a sign going back up, because if the only thing I can do is have my First Amendment speak for me, that's what I'll do. I'm going to let my daughter, along with all the cameras, I'm not going to go ahead and put barbed wire up this time, and I'm not going to go ahead and put a chain around the property any longer. I'm hoping that people have learned their lesson, that I won't be silenced. Hopefully I don't get any legal repercussions from this. I hope not. It encouraged me while I had the sign up that I had several people stop by and actually encourage me. I mean, they had enough guts to actually pull into the driveway and come down and shake my hand and tell me how proud they were that somebody else had the guts to put up a sign and they wished it was them. I hope a lot more people will go ahead and do that. I probably had 60% throw bottles, cuss, honk horns, shine flashlights. Even the police would stop out in the front yard, just sit there at 2 o'clock in the morning with their lights on. You know, on a road that's 45 miles an hour, I would feel sorry for a person coming along at 45 miles an hour that didn't see the police car sitting out in front of the house on the street, you know, shining their lights in the yard. So I went ahead and bought flashlights to shine back at them and laser beams to shine back at them because I didn't want them to think that it was safe to intimidate me any longer. Hopefully they won't do that anymore. But I probably won't be awake at 2 o'clock in the morning guarding my property any longer. I don't have any guns. Don't even have a slingshot anymore. So all I've got is my lights that'll be on. They'll come on at dusk and they won't go off till till daylight. And the sign will go back up. This one's going to end up saying Trump, King of Lies. And on the other side it'll say Vote Democrat and Save the USA. And I guess that's my message going forward from now on is, you can't be one of the guys that sees the emperor and doesn't realize he's not naked. You can't not speak out. The ones that truly believe and they imagine that they see clothes on this emperor, I feel sorry for you. There's got to be something wrong with you mentally. I'd say 3/4 of his followers know that he's naked and realize that, and that it's only for their own prosperity. They're getting something out of it by not speaking out. They must have some goal. All I can say is your children are watching, that the kids will grow up knowing that their mom and dad believed in something that wasn't true. That I'm wondering how come the children aren't saying, Mom, you know that he's naked. You know that this is wrong. What part of his message do you want us to grow up and emphasize or be like?
They wouldn't let him babysit their kids.
No.
I mean, what part of your kids do you want to grow up and emulate this great man that you're thinking is saving the world or saving the USA? You wouldn't want them, other than the fact that he's got money and 90% of that he stole.
I would just say, I think a lot of people have changed their minds since you went to jail. I don't know, it's not near enough, but a lot of people are seeing the light.
I hope so. If they are, I'm not seeing enough evidence of it. I don't know if people think that there's nothing that they can do. If I could actually do a march and march or walk as long as I can go and sit in a chair, I'd love to go to a No Kings sit-in, but I'm just not sure I can stand for that long any longer. After about 15 or 20 minutes, I need to sit down now. They took that out of me. But I support anybody. If I can do a podcast for someone, if I can put a sign in my yard that's, advertising for somebody running for office that's willing to take the U.S. back. But the people all I can say is get some guts. You're not going to fight back if you're not willing to expose yourself to some criticism. And even though I suffered greatly, and I'm sure there's people who have suffered far worse than I have, I'm sure there's going to be more people suffering. Poor James Comey.
Yeah.
Just imagine what seashells can do to you. Well, boy, I'd love to put the 8647 back in my yard again. I had one up before I got arrested. Wasn't sure if that was part of what I got arrested for, but, just get some guts, be strong, and mighty forces will come to your aid.
Well said. Katherine, what do you feel justice, or what would justice look like to you for your dad? Like, where does Shelby County need to start? to make this right?
I think that the first order of business needs to be someone becoming sheriff that is not out for their own gain, but out for the people of this county, number one. I would like to see John Samniego not be reelected. He is 75 years old. He's ran his time. He's done his damage. It's time for that reign to end. We need a good sheriff that can not only protect the people of this county, but that can see two stories at once. It's not always one side or the other. Sometimes you actually have to look outside of the box to figure out what's going on. Not every single case is the exact same. I would like Shelby County, I'd like an apology. I would like changed behavior. That is the best apology, is you don't have to say sorry. Changed behavior is the best apology. What's going to happen to the next guy who talks out? Like there may not be any restitution for my dad and for my family, but what are you going to do next time something like this comes up? Are we going to have the continued behavior that if someone puts an anti-Trump sign in their yard that they end up, almost dying in jail and being charged with felonies, having a bond that they could never secure? Are we going to change the law? Are we going to change the thought process on that? This doesn't need to happen again. And I'm gonna make sure that I do my part, that something changes. Because, what are they gonna do? Arrest everyone that puts an anti-Trump sign up? They're gonna spend all that tax. Imagine the taxpayer money that went into my dad being arrested. The FBI being there, Helena PD, the Shelby County Sheriff, the ATF, the Army.
The Army.
The Army came to the house. And it took multiple days for them to do their investigation. It took like 3 days for them to clear out of the house. So imagine the taxpayer money that went into my dad being arrested for fireworks and the anti-Trump sign.
Well, and we'd never covered this, but it was in, I think, the legal documents that he had a detonator.
Yeah, that's what it is. So the fireworks that my dad bought, because I went to the fireworks shop, I wanted to track down a fresh copy of the receipt. And after I found it on the bank statement, I went to the fireworks shop. And the type of fireworks that my dad bought, they're called TNT Big Boom or Dr. Boom. And those types of fireworks, you have to set off. Instead of you lighting them, it's an app on your phone. Just like people use all the time on 4th of July and New Year's or at church shows. It's a cake. And in Alabama here, we shoot these things like, nobody's business.
Right.
I've been to fireworks shows at friends' houses, and there's stacks of these things over in the corner. It's just a cake. You hook up the app on your phone, you push the button, and it shoots off each cylinder. They weren't shot. They weren't detonated. Nothing. It's not like Dad had tripwires or that he could just blow it up, at any moment or anything like that. Nothing was hooked to it. It's just an app. It was never fully installed on his phone. It was never, signed into or set up or anything like that.
Well, I'm interested to get Alan's thoughts on the revelation that the sign's going back up. But before we get to that, what are your thoughts about that? Are you not concerned? Do you feel like this is a good idea? Are you all for it? What's your stance?
I wish I was as brave as my dad. When it was going on, I was all like, it's just causing so much havoc, and my mom was so upset, and I was like, why don't you just take it down? It's just causing, he's like, because that's my First Amendment right, and all I have is my voice. My dad is way braver than I am. I would have went out and taken it down. I respect my dad so much, and I am so very proud of him for speaking up, even though it caused him to go through what he did. I, and so many people like me, now I'm hearing these things, in support of my dad. I support my dad, and I support the First Amendment for everyone. Everyone should be able to speak their truth and speak their mind. And I would support, the guy down the street with the Trump sign, for him being for him, just as much as I would, someone's anti-Trump sign. That is your yard, that is your choice, that is your home. You say what you like, you wear the t-shirt you want, you have your free speech. I'm going to look the other way. I may not like it, but I'll never do anything about it. I think that free speech is so important that I support anyone putting a sign in their yard. The sign in our yard will be going up, and it's on my property. So if Shelby County has any problem with it, they're more than welcome to come talk to me. But I'm in support of it. I've talked to my family about it. I've talked to my kids about it. It's brought up a lot of difficult situations and talks of, why would you do that again? Well, how do you feel about it? Tell me how. Well, we think that Poppy was right and that he should have been able to say what he wants. My kids have learned a lot about the amendments since all this happened. I didn't want to keep them in the dark, and I wanted them to know what was going on. So the sign will be going up. And hopefully people can respect the fact that that is our yard, not to trespass if you have ill will. If you want to talk about it, send me a message, come knock on my door. We can have a cup of coffee and talk about your disgruntlement or your support. But hopefully everyone has understood the fact that I don't want anyone coming on the property with ill will. We won't have any deterrents up. There are cameras. But hopefully everyone can understand that we support freedom of speech.
Shelby County grand jury has indicted a man on multiple charges after deputies found
DA Ben Fuller
explosives.
says that Jerry Clarke is in police custody on a
Jerry decided to
$400,000
exercise his
bond.
First Amendment rights on his own property by putting up anti-Trump signs.
Alabama Injustice Season 1. The Silencing of Jerry Lee Clarke.
What are your thoughts on what accountability should look like for Jerry Lee Clarke, and what are your thoughts about this sign resurrection?
All right, so it's going to start with it's not about with liberty and justice for some. It's about with liberty and justice for all. When you hear many Republicans talk about what justice looks like or what policy needs to look like, it's to benefit a select few at the intentional expense of others. But when you hear a Democrat or an independent or a libertarian talk about what they think the policy should look like, it includes everybody. That it's some sort of, maybe it's not everybody gets everything that they want, but it's more inclusive. It accepts everyone in and tries to make it as fair for everyone that lives here as possible. You don't get that with Republicans, and you especially don't get that in Alabama, and you certainly don't get that in Shelby County, where it's absolutely ruby red and trying to break through it, even though you're not a Republican and yet you live here. You had neighbors stop by that are cheering you on, support you, and are really proud of you for doing this, because guess what? They live in Shelby County too, but they're not ruby red either. And yet people like Will Ainsworth or Wes Allen or so many others would have us all believe that just because 40% of the entire population of Alabama voted for what ends up being a supermajority of Republican policymakers in this state, that somehow that supermajority gives them a mandate to tyrannize everyone else that's in the minority. And that's not how our democracy, that's not how our republic is supposed to work at all. It's supposed to be a balance and a working together, and differing voices from differing sides coming together, meeting at the table, and working for every single one of us as Americans. And you don't get that with Republicans. We're definitely not seeing that right now with the gerrymandering fight. We certainly haven't been seeing it with the oversight of the Public Service Commission or Alabama Department of Corrections or even Department of Human Resources here in the state. There are some systemic issues that need absolute addressing. We need some oversight. There needs to be some clear audits as to how systemically the nurses at Shelby County Jail are incentivized to not care about the people that are inside. There is something systemic there that they don't have to, they don't need to, it's not part of their job. And it undervalues and undercuts what a human life is worth and what those nurses or what those corrections officers are there to be doing. And that system supports that liberty and justice for some. That Republican mentality, that exclusionist mentality is in support of liberty and justice for some. And if you don't look like me and if you don't think like me, whether or not there's a $500 fine for littering anywhere around your road, people are just going to throw out the litter. Where are they arresting for that? And that's just a small citation. But that's the mentality. If you are part of this perceived minority, then automatically you're not worth any further consideration by those in charge. And unfortunately, the data of population and voting statistics in this state doesn't match that attitude. It doesn't guarantee that mandate, because ultimately, even though there is a supermajority in power and has been in power for over 20 years in this state, nevertheless, those people got voted in by a minority of our state population, and that does not grant them a right to tyrannize over the rest of us.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an absolute pleasure to see you out. I echo everyone's statements that you look so much better. We were all very, very concerned.
Thank you.
And, I know this will not be the last time that we see you out, and next time you will be standing up and marching around, and we'll get you there. Thank you so very much for the opportunity. Thank you for allowing me to be in the process, or part of the process, to free you and help in what ways I can to find justice for you. Because here in Alabama, we dare defend our rights, and yours have certainly been violated, and we'll work on it. Alan Thomas for House District 50.
Shelby County grand jury has indicted a man on multiple charges after deputies found
DA Ben Fuller
explosives.
says that Jerry Clarke is in police custody on a
Jerry decided to
$400,000
exercise his
bond.
First Amendment rights on his own property by putting up anti-Trump signs.
Alabama Injustice Season 1. The Silencing of Jerry Lee Clarke.